Today we're going to show you how to make basic bread. It uses some really simple, cheap, boring ingredients, flour, yeast and water, but in the oven it transforms into something that everyone loves, freshly baked bread. So the key ingredient is our flour. This is strong white flour, and by strong we mean it's got a strong content of protein or gluten in the flour, and that's what gives the bread its elasticity, its bounce, its crumb. So that all goes into a bowl, and then we're going to add in some salt, some sugar and our yeast, and this is the dried stuff. So you get it in a sachet, you want about 7 grams, 1 sachet worth per the 500 grams of flour. That can go in as well. Make sure it's separate to the sugar and the salt. If the yeast directly touches the salt, it doesn't really like it. Give it a mix up. Now the yeast is in there as a leavening agent, so it's going to give the bread its rise but also so much of its flavour. So to activate the yeast it needs 4 things. One of those is food. It gets food in the form of the natural sugars in flour, plus the little bit of sugar we added to speed things up. It also needs moisture or water, so we're going to add water to the mix to turn it into a dough. Thirdly, it needs warmth, which is why our water is just slightly warm. It should be body temperature. It's about 37 degrees, but basically anything out of a warm tap that isn't too hot. And finally, it needs time, and we're going to come on to the time in a minute. But what we need to do is pour our water into the dough. Leave a little bit back of your measured out amount in case you don't need it all. You can always add more if you need it, you can't take it away. And then mix it together. I'm just using a table knife, really simple while it's wet to make sure it doesn't stick to too much. And a table knife is a lot easier than a fork or a spoon, it's much easier to clean. This whole process can be done in a mixer with a dough hook. It's just as simple to do it by hand, it just takes a bit more effort. This will need a little bit more of our water when I get my hands in. As soon as you start to get one dough, then it's best to get your fingers in and you want to bring it together. And as soon as it's all in one lump, get it out and onto a board. It makes the next process a lot easier. If at any point you find your bread is a little bit sticky, then add a tiny touch more flour. But we don't want to dry this out, you do want it tacky but not sticky. What this is doing is stretching the gluten in the flour, and it will give you a really elastic dough. At this point you can see it's kind of going to break, it's mottled, it's not looking great. We have to keep working it like this for about 10 minutes until it's soft and elastic. That's what gives you a good loaf. Movement is using the heel of your hand, just moving it around on the board. You're not beating it, it's more just kind of giving it a rough massage. It's worth mentioning that into your flour, yeast, salt and sugar you can add other flavours like dried herbs or garlic powder or spices, but today we're just going for the classic. If you're doing this by machine, 5 minutes is probably enough, but by hand a good 10 until you get that soft elastic consistency. Even after a few minutes you can see it's getting better, but it's not there yet. Bread dough and pasta dough are completely the opposite to pastry dough. These ones you want to work hard to stretch the gluten to give you a great loaf. After plenty of kneading, you should have a soft pillow of dough. And now we need to leave it to rest. The technical term is to prove. And in that time, the yeast is going to ferment. So you want to tuck the bottoms under to give it a nice smooth top. And we're going to leave it in a bowl covered with a tea towel in a warm room. The temperature is important. We need to give the yeast time and warmth. In that time it will feed on the sugars and it will give off carbon dioxide, and that's what gives it the bubbles and makes it rise. After an hour it looks something like that. So that's our proven dough, and at this point we knock it back, which basically means take out the excess bubbles. And you can see the texture of the dough now, and as you do that you can smell it. The yeast is giving so much flavour to this bread. Give it one final knead, and at this point if you wanted to you can put in some extra flavours, some fresh herbs, some cheese, some dried tomatoes or olives. Now's the time to add it after that first prove. And after that first prove you can see the consistency of the bread, it's even softer than it was before. And now time to bake it, and you can bake it anyhow you like. We're going to do it in a loaf tin, so grab yourself a loaf tin. Again, just like before, you're going to tuck it under so you've got a nice round top, but this time not a ball, a slightly elongated shape, and put it into our tin. Push it out to flatten it slightly, and then we're going to leave it for a second prove. So another 30 to 45 minutes under a tea towel again, just at room temperature, and it will balloon up. At that point, you're ready to bake. To bake our risen dough, preheat an oven to 220 degrees Celsius and place an oven-proof tray on the bottom of the oven. As the bread goes in, pour water into that tray and that will give you steam, which gives you an amazing crust. You want to bake it for 15 minutes at the 220 and then turn the temperature right down to 180 degrees Celsius for another 20 minutes of baking. You know when your loaf is cooked because not only has it risen a little bit more than before it went in the oven, but it's now golden on top, and if you turn it out and give it a tap, it should sound hollow. At this point you need to let your loaf completely cool before slicing it. In summary, a few things to remember to get your bread right every time. First of all is the warmth that the yeast needs to do its proving. So that's why you use warm water and prove at room temperature. The second one is time. Give it plenty of time to double in size, first in the bowl and then secondly in the loaf tin. Thirdly, when you bake it, a really high temperature to start off with and a tray of water in the bottom of the oven to create steam. Then turn it down halfway through baking. And finally, you know it's baked when you've got that hollow sound. Remember all those and you've got everything you need to make basic bread.